episode 122 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot or iced coffee and an awesome book. Join us for a virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So this week we're going to do things a tiny bit differently than we normally do when we finish books. Normally, obviously, at the end, we'll talk about how we felt about the book. But this book is a bit different because we kind of went into it already disliking it a little bit.
Yeah.
Or just not liking certain aspects of it kind of thing. So I guess we're going to talk about if any of your opinion or our opinions have changed on the books, or if you plan on reading the next one. Yeah. Basically, how do you feel about the book now after going in depth like we did?
So, a part of me does like it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, it does sort of make me want to read the next one a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate characters as... Like, I do still really dislike some of the characters.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand why some characters make the choices that they make.
Mm-hmm.
But Carden himself has grown on me.
Yes. Me too.
Because in the first book, I was like, this guy is the supreme asshole. He's the legit worst.
Mm-hmm.
But reading through it again, it was more like, oh, it's not actually him. It's his buddies.
Yeah.
Like, he has actually been very removed from all of it.
Yeah.
So that has been good. Like, I've warmed up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I actually probably prefer him to Jude a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's normal, reasonable. I feel the same way, but I feel like I'm gonna listen to the next two books because I want to know what happens. I'm a bit about all the politics stuff just because, like, there's too much political stuff in real life that's overwhelming that, like, reading a book that's very politics heavy is not how I want to spend my summer. So yeah. I'm hoping, where it is a YA book, I'm hoping, like, even though it is politics heavy, hopefully it's not, like, too heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I definitely am going to read or listen to the other two, which is more than I did last time. So, and I think I kind of, like, have an appreciation for Jude as a character more than I did before. Because, like, as a woman reading a book, I tend to, like, put myself in the shoes of the female character. But, like, the first read through, I was like, I would not do any of the things she's doing. Because she's, like, she's written very morally gray, very, like most fantasy books you read, and, like, the female main character is, like, a huge badass. And not that Jude isn't, she is. But, like, you're like, yeah, that's all the stuff I would do. I would be amazing. And Jude, you're kind of like, shit, that's not what I was expecting. So it's just, I like it, but it was harder to get into it, I think. Like, it was harder for me to get into her as a character because it's not what I was expecting of a female character in a YA book.
Yeah. And to be fair, and maybe I've said it before, that I have heard that the second and third books get a lot better.
Oh yeah, that's ideal.
Anyway, I have heard that the second and third book are better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've Wikipedia'd it, because it's how I live my life.
Yeah, wild.
but it gets a lot happens.
Yeah.
Like, from reading the synopsises of stuff, I'm like, this thing happens, then this thing happens, then this thing happens, then this, and it's like, whoa, okay, like, more and more and more. It's like, it doesn't slow down.
Yeah, which I guess is not surprising, because it's like, this was only one book, and like, partway through, we were like, now you're a spy, which I was like a left turn that I wasn't really expecting, so I do like that from Holly Black as an author, the like, surprise of it. So, I'm not surprised that like, 2 full more books in the series, a lot of shit's gonna go down. I did actually start listening to the second one already.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah. I already had them on Audible because my niece wanted them, so. But yeah. So I think I'm going to get through them, but I don't think it's a series, if I had to read it with my eyeballs, I don't think it's a series that I would want to put the effort into, especially, not to harken back to last week, but it is a lazy romance girl summer for me, so, in my reading preferences.
I'm just trying to see if the second book is on Kindle Unlimited the way
the first one is?
The first one is, yeah. It is!
Oh, good.
So, anybody who has Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free!
Woo woo.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I like when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're just gonna get right into it. Just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy, but they won't.
Yeah. So this is our last week with The Cruel Prince. We're reading chapters 24 to 30, which is obviously the end. The name of this book is kind of funny. Just thinking of the book in general, because, like, it really did...
Who are they talking about?
Yeah, well, all of them. Really, like, all the princes were cruel. Like, Balekin made her... No, not Balekin. Dane made her stab her hand. Balekin killed all of his family. Like, Carden is maybe the nicest out of them all. Which is kind of funny, because, like, obviously that's who you're supposed to think it's about. But, like... Mm-hmm. Really, this read-through, we kind of realized he's not as shitty as we thought. Like, he's not great. But... He wasn't trying to kill her.
He's got his own shit going on.
Yeah. So. Anyway. Just a tidbit that, thinking of the title. But, so, I guess last week, a lot happened. Like we said with this book, there's, like, throwing the surprises at us. But last week, basically, they were going to the coronation. Everyone expected Dane to become king. And instead, Balekin ended up being responsible for murdering his entire family, except for Carden, who was hiding at the time. Or just drunk in a corner.
Very drunk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Carden is now the only one who can crown Balekin, because it needs to be a family member. And... so everybody's
Which is great for Carden, actually.
Yeah, everybody's on the hunt for him, but Jude already has him sequestered away in the Court of Shadows hideout area, where she has him tied up as her prisoner. And also, she went back home after all of the carnage and got into a fight with her sister because Locke was, like, double playing them both, but her sister knew about it all, and she's not so sad about losing Locke. She's more sad that her sister was a huge bitch and didn't choose her.
Betrayed her? Yeah. Was an asshole?
Yeah. Fun times. So, and she was also mad that they were humiliating her. Because, like, that's a big thing with her, too, is, like, she has her pride, she has her honor, and that's, like, all she can really control, and she is so pissed that they, like, embarrassed her by playing her, basically, and lying to her. So, you know. So yeah, this week we start with, and this is interesting too, because obviously we just talked about Jude and Taryn fighting, but Jude like wakes up and she immediately goes to find Taryn because she wants to like make things right before everything goes to hell. And it's just interesting because she is always, and I think it was week 1 or week 2 when they went to the human world, and Jude was like, I'm sorry to Taryn, and Taryn was just like, you're probably mad about this. Like, Taryn didn't apologize for her part in whatever bullshit they were fighting about then. And it kind of seems like that's her MO. She's very self-centered. She's very, like, it makes it somebody else's problem that she did something wrong.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that Jude is trying to find her to probably apologize, but you're also like, she doesn't need to apologize. She didn't do anything.
Yeah, and that's sort of part of my issue with their sort of twinness. So, like, usually there's, in literature, a reoccurring theme is, like, there's a good twin, there's a bad twin. Mm-hmm. Right?
Literally the last 3 books, wasn't it?
But even though there's, like, a good twin and a bad twin, the twins still, like, have a connection. Mm-hmm. And, like, the bad twin is always like, oh, I want you to join me. Like, I love you. You're my twin. Like, mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to hurt you, sort of a thing. But Taryn does not seem to have that sort of, like, instinct.
Yeah.
It's like she has no familial connections at all. Like, she doesn't. It's like she, not that Jude doesn't care, because Jude does seem to care a little bit more.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe it's just the way they describe it, because, like, they don't really focus on the emotions mm-hmm. of the characters. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get, like, a long internal monologue about how, like, Jude is so upset over Taryn and how she can't believe she betrayed her. Like,
yeah.
We don't get those feelings. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe it's just because I'm used to other writers going, like, really deep into those sort of, you know what I mean? And maybe that's why I'm sort of feeling the lack of them. Or maybe it's a design choice because they're in Faerie and, you know, they're not supposed to be super emotional. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe it's meant as a choice to be like, look how stunted they are because they had this tragic thing happen to them and then they were, like, brought into this different world. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, but I just know that I feel the lack of the emotional explanations.
Yeah.
And it just, like, Taryn literally just seems so friggin' heartless.
Yeah.
And, like, it really bothers me. Like, I don't know, and maybe it just has something to do with, like, you know, we both have sisters, and, like, mm-hmm. you know, you would never even fathom, you know, like, betraying your sister that way.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that bothers me so much. I just know that it really, really bothers me. And, like, sorry, I'm going off on, like, a little, okay. Like, but, like, even, like, this rift continues until the end of the book, like, and I'm just annoyed because what does Taryn have to be mad about?
Yeah.
Why is Taryn mad at Jude? What, like, I don't understand.
I have no idea.
So.
Yeah. Yeah,
I actually think Taryn is my least favorite character in this entire series. More even than Valerian and, like, Nicasia, who are assholes.
Yeah, Nicasia, and, like, I'll give a pass to because I'm starting to like her.
Yeah. And, like, sort of starting to see her, like, motivations and stuff a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we saw sort of, like, a moment. We had a moment with her.
Yeah.
But, and Valerian's just an asshole, but, like...
He didn't hide it.
Yeah. But, like, what is Taryn's excuse?
Yeah. Nothing. There is no excuse.
Nothing. She's just an asshole.
Yeah. Her and Locke deserve each other, really. Because they're both shitty.
Yeah. But Carden says that Jude and Locke deserve
Yeah, but that's not true.
No, it's not.
which we get into this week. So basically she's going to find Taryn to make things right, and we're like, why? Don't do it. But she can't find her because Taryn isn't in her room, so she goes to see Oriana to ask where Taryn is. And Oriana's actually in her room, and she's on her balcony. And Jude asks what she's doing, and it's like an odd moment, because like Jude doesn't normally come to Oriana's room or seek her out or talk to her. Like, they have a kind of strained relationship. But Oriana just tells her that, like, her people had wings, and sometimes she feels the lack of them. Which is just, like, it really has nothing to do with anything. But it was just such a emotional moment.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we haven't seen any moments of we have seen a couple. I think it was just sort of meant to be like a moment of connection, like a vulnerability for Oriana, for us to be like, okay, she's not a terrible person. As the beginning of the book, we were like, what a bitch.
Yeah.
But like, as it's gone on, it seems like she really just wants to protect those she cares about.
Yeah.
And she's sacrificed a shit ton.
And we get into that now, basically. But, like, yeah it is, I guess, like, for lack of a better word, a humanizing moment for her. And, like, obviously human is the wrong word, but what are you supposed to say? A Faerieizing moment for her? Like, I don't know. Anyway, so, Oriana basically tells her that Taryn is gone to the house of her betrothed, but they're all going to be together at the High King Balekin's manor tomorrow because he's throwing a feast for Madoc and the other guards that basically fucked shit up for him.
Right.
Jude asks Oriana if Oak is going because she is very protective of Oak, and she doesn't want Oak to be around, like, all this bloodshed and all this bullshit, and she's also thinking, like, if she leaves Faerie, she won't get to see Oak grow up. Because she's still debating between what she's going to do. Like, is she going to leave with Vivi? Is she going to leave and go to a different court with the Court of Shadows and, like, live her life in Faerie, but somewhere else in hiding? Or is she going to figure something else out?
But can I just add, too, like, another moment that I'm lacking the sort of emotional connections? We haven't really got, like... She does a shit ton for Oak.
Mm-hmm.
To save Oak. To keep Oak from, to sort of protect him and keep him sheltered.
Yeah.
But, like, we haven't heard that much about, like, her connections with Oak. Yeah, we've heard a couple of stories about how he's been a little shit sometimes and how he's, like, bitten her and glamored her and, like, done these terrible things to her.
Mm-hmm.
But, like... So why does she feel this, like, self-sacrificing attitude for Oak?
I think it's, like, a representation of herself as a child. She's trying to fix herself by making his childhood less shitty than hers. Like, it kind of feels like she's like, oh, I'm already fucked over by my childhood. At least I can stop that from happening to him. And it's not even as much it's not because she loves him so much, I don't think. It's because she wants to, like, stop somebody from becoming like her, it seems like. So, like, I can kind of buy into it in that way. Like, I don't think it's their connection that is driving it. I don't think it's their love that's driving it. I think it's she's looking at him and he's just a baby. And she's like, he can't grow up in this awful world and become like the rest of them. But, because, yeah, there isn't really that connection that you're looking for with any of her sisters, really, or Oak. Like, the best connection she has is Vivi, and they butt heads all the time, too. Which, like, she is a teenage girl, so, you know, but still. So Jude is, like, looking around Oriana's room, and she sees her jewelry, and she sees and you're like, this is convenient, but she sees a golden acorn that looks exactly like the one that she found in Lariope's dress pocket. And Oriana answers the question. She says Maddox has insisted that Oak go to the feast, but she doesn't want him to because he's too young. So
Yikes.
Jude is just like in her head kind of ignoring Oriana and like piecing everything together. And we get a bit like it's one thing that I don't love about this book is like she's throwing in information and I'm like, we didn't know this until this exact moment, but the character did. So how are we supposed to piece things together if the character didn't tell us before now? But so Oriana and Maddox got married super quickly, and Oak was born even quicker after that. But like,
which I don't understand. Like, how did nobody notice that Oriana was pregnant?
Yeah.
Like, how would no, like, oh, the baby was born super quick. Like, did she just not show? Did she take that as the type of fairy I am, I don't show.
Yeah.
I give birth in like 2 months.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. Maybe that happens with some fairies.
I want an explanation on how nobody else pieced it together.
Yeah. Also, Jude and her siblings weren't allowed to see him at first because he was so sickly. So Jude is like piecing all of this together. And that was all the information that obviously the readers didn't have until this moment. But you're like, it's important. If we knew that, we would have put it all together already.
Yeah.
But she just confronts Oriana and says, Oak isn't Maddox's child. And Oriana's like, shut the fuck up. But Jude continues, and she says, Prince Dane is his father, and Liriope is his mother. And that's why Maddox backed Balekin, because of the prophecy that Dane heard, that if his child was born, he would never become king. So he couldn't become king. It's one of those things like, if you never heard the prophecy, would you have done anything? And would anything have changed? Because like it's very much like Oedipus. Like,
yes,
you know what I mean? Yeah. So Oriana asks like how she could possibly know that. And Jude like closes the door, so they're gonna have like a quiet conversation. She asks where Oak is now, and he's apparently with his nurse. And then she asks what happened 7 years ago. Oriana and Liriope were friends and confidants, which is kind of like odd because they were both consorts to the king, but they didn't have any like jealousy or anything. Like they were actually really good friends. And of course we get, it's hard for fairies to have babies. Mm-hmm. Of course it is. It always is. So I guess Liriope didn't think that it was possible to get pregnant so soon after having Locke, because it's so hard to get pregnant, so she wasn't really worried about it. And we also get a tidbit that like fairies keep humans around to like have babies to keep the bloodline going. So that's why they live so closely with humans, and can't just get rid of them completely, basically. Which is interesting. Because otherwise, like, the bloodlines would die out and all that shit. Oriana then tells Jude, like, blusher mushrooms are a terrible way to die. And we get, like, exactly what they do. And I'm like, is this foreshadowing for something that's going to happen in another book? And obviously I have no idea. But apparently with blusher mushrooms, your body stops working, but you're conscious the whole time. And she says by the time she got the acorn, Liriope was dead. And Jude pieces together that Oriana must have cut Oak out of her body. And Oriana says she named Oak for the acorn that, like, had from Liriope. So that's why she named him Oak. Jude then asks, like, if Oriana knew that it was Dane that poisoned Liriope, but she says she didn't until Maddox found out. And Jude asks what Maddox's play is, because she knows he can't intend for Balekin to be king. Like, this guy is awful. Nobody wants him to be king. That can't have been Maddox's plan. But Oriana is just, like, confused. She's like, what do you mean? He doesn't have a plan.
But, like, how would she not... Like, I guess, like, they stay that separate. But, like, he must... I'd just like to know... Like, they told us a little bit, but, like, I would like to know, one, how Maddox found out, and about Oak.
About what part?
And
she told him.
Before they were married?
Yeah, the marriage was...
Why?
The marriage was to cover up having Oak.
I know, but why would she tell him?
Because what else was she gonna do?
She just trusted some rando.
Yeah. Well, she needed somebody to protect her, so I think she went to Maddox and was like, hey, I need you to marry me. This is gonna be our child. We'll tell everybody that, but it's not. Like, I think she was desperate and just trying to find somebody.
I guess, but, like, if she did that to be like, hey, and just, like, laid it all out there, I don't understand, like, if she trusted him enough to tell him that and to be like, hey, like, we're gonna have to raise this kid together, I need you to marry me, blah, 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 mm-hmm. I don't understand how she doesn't know that he would have a plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, if she trusted him enough for this, she must have known him well enough to trust him. So, like, how would she not? And, like, they've been married and living together for 7 years mm-hmm. under the guise that they are, like, a
love match,
quote-unquote happily married couple. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily, like, in love, but, like, together.
Yeah.
They're not living separately.
Mm-hmm.
They live together. They go to all their functions together. They have dinner together every night. So, like, I just don't understand how you wouldn't know that your husband is, like, a master manipulator.
Yeah, I think she's just being dumb here. Like, she should have known better.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take that. She's just an idiot. Sure.
And I wonder, maybe Maddox was the one that found Liriope and saw that the body was, like, cut open and was, like, went to Oriana afterwards and was like, I know this child is there. And maybe he inserted himself into it and was like, we can get married, and, like, gave her a solution.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Because that's something I feel like he would do. So, yeah. Oriana is being dumb, but Jude says, obviously Maddox is going to put Oak on the throne. And you're like, duh. And Oriana's like, but he's just a child. But Jude, like, thinks it all through, and it's obvious that that's what he's going to do. Because if Oak is on the throne, Maddox can rule until Oak becomes, like, comes of age. So Maddox could, like, basically groom Oak to only listen to him. Basically, Maddox would be ruler of Faerie, and everyone would go to war all the time because that's what Maddox loves. So that's what Jude is assuming. Oriana doesn't really believe it. She's like, Oak is too young and frail. No one will follow him, and, like, all this shit. And you're like, you're just being kind of dumb, man. Jude thinks that Balekin would never crown Oak, but she knows Carden would. And she thinks, like, if Oak is king, she would become a princess because she's, like, his brother, kind of. So she would get power with Oak becoming king as well. So, like, that's her whole shtick, this book, is she wants power. But she thinks of Oak wearing the crown, and it makes her flinch, and she remembers being glamored by him and, like, slapping herself over and over and over again. And she's like, if we give him power, like, what is he gonna do with it too? Oriana, I guess, has come to the conclusion that she's right and asks Jude to stop it. And you're like, what the fuck is Jude supposed to do about this? But, like, obviously she's going to. But Oriana, you're like, why don't you figure out...
Why are you asking a 17-year-old girl to deal with it instead of you dealing with it yourself?
Yeah. But Oriana basically says, like, Jude once said that she would never harm Oak, so she has to do something about this now. And Jude thinks of, like, what she could possibly do, and she just says maybe, which she knows isn't super helpful, but, like, what, she can't really promise it.
No.
So she goes back to the Court of Shadows, and she goes in, and Carden is just, like, on tide playing cards with the others, and, like, drinking wine and having a good time. And she's like, what the fuck? He's supposed to be hating his life, but he's, like, having a ball. And the bomb is back, which we're happy about because that means that she is not dead. So that's good. They also, like, stole all the good wine from the cellars and some jewels that Carden told the others where they were while, like, everything's in disarray. So, like, they're rolling in it, doing good.
Yeah.
Jude is obviously pissed because she's kind of worried that, like, Carden will connect with the others and she'll become the outsider here because, like, they're all fairies and she's human, obviously. So she doesn't want him to get too close to the others.
Yes.
Which is smart. And I was, like, impressed that she realized that in her head. So she asks what he's offered them, and they say gold and power, which he doesn't have. So you're like, yeah. Jude says she's taking him to the back and reminds them all that he's her prisoner. So she cuts his legs free, and she does feel a little bad that he had to, like, sleep in a chair, but she just brings him to the office that she was in before. And she really looks at him, and she thinks if she kills him, she can stop thinking about him. And you're like, this isn't a good enough reason to kill him. Like,
nope.
She's like,
not even a little.
She's like, I find him too attractive and can't stop thinking about him, so I might just kill him. And I'm like, that's hilarious. And I love how ridiculous her brain works. So yeah. She does think, like, obviously it would be harder to make Oak king without Carden. And, like, if she did kill him, she would have no cards to play. But she thinks, like, it would still be worth it. And you're like, Jesus Christ. So she grabs the crossbow that's there, and she draws it. And he asks if she's going to shoot him. And he's, like, kind of shocked that this is what she's doing. Because she's in her head like, yeah, it's worth it. I'm going to do this. But then he says he can see why she would do it, but he'd prefer she didn't. And she asks if he thought she'd stand being smirked at and mocked. And she asks if he still thinks he's better than her. Because, like, her big thing is that he's humiliated her and, like, been a jerk and all this shit. But he says, like, yeah. He says to her now, he smiles when he's nervous and that she's terrifying and, like, his whole family is dead and he knows what he deserves. So he's nervous right now and that's why he's smirking. And it just, like, this moment melted my heart for Carden. I was like, oh, he's just a baby and he doesn't know how to express his emotions. Like, he's just scared. And I love that he called her terrifying. Just gives you a little thrill. So she's kind of surprised by that because she's like, oh, I've been reading his emotions wrong the entire time I've known him if, like, the smirks and shit are just covering up the fact that he's nervous.
Yes.
So she asks him to tell her anything she wants, and he swears like he will. And he asks her word that she won't shoot him, but she says her word doesn't mean much. And he says she keeps saying that, and it's not very comforting, which actually makes her laugh, which I love, because she hasn't laughed very much in these books, if you've noticed. So she lays down the crossbow and agrees. And he asks what he can do to persuade her from bringing him to Madoc. And she just says, like, concentrate on staying alive right now and answering the questions, and we can worry about that later. So the first thing she actually brings up, which is hilarious, is the paper that she found with her name all over it.
So everything else aside,
yeah.
Why'd you write my name down a million times?
Yeah. But
not, like, anything about, like, why were you whipped? Or, like, what's on the go with you being beaten? No. Why'd you write my name down?
Or, like, what do you think Balekin's gonna do? Or literally anything, but this is what she cared. And you're like, oh yeah, she's a 17-year-old girl. But she doesn't, like, specifically ask a question, and that was their deal. He'll answer any question she asks. So he kind of distracts her and says, like, he says that's not a question, but he says, like, she could ask about his tail, but she thinks, like, she's seen it already. And she...
Yeah, what is she...
she kind of moves on, and I'm like, why didn't you ask him what the paper was about? Like, she could have just asked a question and got an answer, but she just doesn't. So she asks about Taryn and Locke, and Carden laughs, and he tells her Locke wooed Taryn by throwing rocks at her window and then hanging out in secret. And Carden thinks it was to make Nicasia jealous. And Jude just asks, like, how did Locke know which room was hers and which was Taryn's? And Carden says maybe he didn't. And he thinks that Locke wanted them both by the end, and it didn't matter which one he wooed first. So, like, that's interesting. I don't think it would have worked the other way if he had wooed Jude first and been like, you need to keep it a secret from your sister. But obviously we don't know. So she asks what about him, and her questions aren't the best, and you'd think she'd be better at it, but he just says Locke hasn't wooed him yet. And she's like, no, that's obviously not what she meant. But she asks about Nicasia, and that, like, stops him from smiling and joking. And he says, like, Locke stole her away from Carden, either to make him angry or jealous, or because Nicasia is magnificent. And Jude asks, and Jude asks if he loved her. And Carden says yes, which is interesting.
That isn't, what a sin.
Yeah, it makes me kind of feel bad for him, like, this whole section.
Yeah.
She asks why Carden wants her dead, and he says he never wanted anyone to die, and that he's not a killer. And she thinks back to, like, all of the times that he's bullied her or been around, but specifically in the water, like, he waited till the pixie stopped advancing before he left them, and he pulled Valerian off of her with the fruit that time, and, like, he's very terrible at swords and fighting. And she wonders, like, maybe it's true. Maybe Carden wasn't trying to kill her after all. And you're like, yes.
Duh.
That was Valerian.
And Nicasia was, like, a bitch,
Oh,
too.
100%, yeah. So she tells him that Valerian tried to kill her twice, obviously once in the tower, and then once in her room. And he just says, like, he thought she tracked Valerian down and murdered him for spite. He didn't realize that Valerian actually broke into the general's house to kill her. And he says, like, that was super dumb. And, like, obviously. Like, if she had have actually screamed, Valerian would have been worse than killed. I don't know what that is, but, you know. She actually shows him the bruises, like, around her neck, and as, like, proof that she didn't just hunt down Valerian. And he goes to, like, I guess, touch the bruises and check that she's okay almost, but she grabs the crossbow because she doesn't want him to touch her. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yes, she does.
Right? And he says he knew Valerian wanted to hurt her, but he thought that, like, the bullying and the bullshit was enough. He didn't realize that he was actually actively going to go to her house. So she just asks once and for all, like, why he hates her. And he's like, you really want to know the truth? And she's like, obviously. So he says he hates her because her father loves her, even though she's mortal born to his unfaithful wife. And he's a prince, and his father hates him, and his brother beats him. And he also says he hates her because Locke used her and Taryn to make Nicasia cry after stealing her. Like, stealing Nicasia away from Carden. Locke then used them both to make Nicasia cry, which is sad. And after the tournament, Balekin apparently used to bring up Jude and how good she was to, like, mock Carden. So that's interesting. But she just...
But, like, can I just say, though, none of that is her fault.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, he hates her and, like, torments her, even though none of it is her fault.
Yeah. So
she can't help that her father, her quote-unquote father, loves her. And
quote,
she
unquote.
also can't help what... Yeah, she also can't help what Locke does.
Mm-hmm.
So it just... it's just annoying that he, like, I hate you and I'm mean to you because of all these things. And she's like, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. She literally tells him that that's ridiculous and not a good enough reason. And she also is just like, you can't be jealous of me. I am immortal. Like, that is dumb. So she asks if there's another reason, and he just stays quiet. And she's like, oh, he's not answering because he can't lie. Like, obviously there's something else. So she kind of forces him to talk about it. And he says he can't stop thinking of her. And she thinks it's a joke. And he just says to just kill him now because he doesn't want to be talking about it. Which is kind of funny. I love it. But she takes a dagger and puts it under his chin, and she, like, is close to him in this moment, and she can tell it's true and that he wants her and hates himself for it. So she, like, nicks him with the knife, and then she leans in and kisses him, and we're like, woo!
What? But I don't understand why.
Because
like, she doesn't
wants
like
it.
him.
She does. Well, she doesn't. She doesn't like him, but she wants him. And she can't stop thinking of him either. Like, the entire book is like, I hate him so much. But yeah, so they're kissing, and she thinks to herself, like, this kiss is so much more than the kisses with Locke. And Carden reaches for her, but he's, like, hesitant, and she knows it's because he doesn't want to want this, but obviously does. And she feels the moment he gives in, and, like, the kiss is just magical, and she's struck by her desire, and she's repulsed by it, and she, like, throws the dagger behind her, and it, like, startles him, and they pull apart, and you're like, damn. She asks him if it's what he imagined, and he says no, and she asks how, and he says, and I quote, unless you're really going to stab me, I missed a word there. Unless you're really going to stab me, I'm not telling you. And he said, I might not even tell you if you were going to stab me. And I just love it. I love how he, like, hates himself so much for loving her, which is awful. Why do I love it? But I don't know. Him being like, you can kill me because I can't deal with this embarrassment. It's just, like, so...
I wonder
funny.
what it is, though. Like, I wonder what he would say.
Yeah, I'm assuming it was better than he ever imagined. Or, like, he doesn't want to talk about how much he's imagined kissing her kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, yes, I want this from his point of view, too. He offers her a deal then, and he basically says, ask Balekin for whatever you want, but also to give Carden land far away, and he'll leave, and Balekin will never have to see him again, and he can have kids that he can give the crown to when he's done being king, but Carden wants, like, he doesn't want to be in exile, basically. He just wants some land and to go do whatever the fuck he wants.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't really agree or not. She just tells him to get up, and he asks if she's afraid that he'll run, but she says, like, she kind of gets sarcastic here, which I absolutely love. She says she's a fool over him now that they've kissed and will do whatever he wants for, like...
She's being sarcastic.
Yeah, which I absolutely love. And
I also love it.
He's just, like, he's caught off guard, and he's just, like, he finds it so odd, and he even says, like, her lying to him outright is so weird. But she just says the truth is, like, he won't run because he has nowhere to go, which is just such a sad thing to say, and it makes me sad for him.
I know, it's like, listen, you have nowhere to go, so you might as well stay captive with me.
Yeah, like, what are you gonna do? Go to Balekin without any leverage of, like... Yeah, so... So they leave the office, and the ghost asks what they're doing with him, and Jude just says she needs to go for a walk, and then she'll explain everything. But she tells them, like, Maddox offered her anything, so they need to decide exactly what they want, and then they can go back to Maddox and, like, make an actual deal.
Yeah.
So Jude, and I'm like, I was kind of annoyed because I'm like, Jude, just tell them something. I know she's cagey for a reason, but I'm like, you can't just keep stringing these people along.
No, but she can, though.
She can, and she does. So
yeah, exactly. She does.
Carden goes back to playing cards, and he just, like, watches Jude as she leaves. And I love the, like, juxtaposition of, like, how good he is at shuffling cards and playing cards versus how bad he is with a sword. I don't know why. I just love that, like, he's so adept at cards, and he's just so shitty at fighting.
I also really appreciate that, like, because in all fantasy literature that we read, like, everyone's such an amazing fighter, and, like, if they're not an amazing fighter, then they become an amazing fighter in, like, 3 months. And I just really like that he's terrible.
Yeah.
And, like, he doesn't really improve.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he's bad, and he stays bad. He's a prince of Faerie, but, like, that doesn't mean he has to be, like, this amazing sword fighter.
Yeah. No, I love it, too. I'm like, it's fun. It's fun. So Jude goes for her walk, and she actually goes to the Lake of Mirrors, and she's kind of debating what to do. She's like, Balekin can't become king. Like, if he did, we already know he's kind of a terrible prince. Like, all of his human servants are glamored and live terrible lives. So she's like, if he became king, he could reverse the rules that keep humans safe. And, like, obviously that's one of her main worries because she is a human.
Yeah.
So she thinks she could turn Carden over to Maddox, who would put Oak on the throne, but then Oak would be raised in, like, bloodshed and have a, like, terrible upbringing and become just like Maddox, and she's worried about that. She does know, like, Maddox would give her a better deal, though, than Balekin would, if, like, in the trading of Carden kind of situation.
Yeah, because it's her quote-unquote father.
Yeah, but then and, like, he's obviously trying to get Carden to crown Oak, not Balekin, and if she gave Carden to Balekin, like, he'd just be like, thanks, here's some gold. Like, he wouldn't give her so yeah, she thinks, like, even if she does give Carden over to either of them, what would she do then? Is she gonna leave with Vivi, or would she want to be a knight and rule under Oak and Maddox, or under Balekin? Like, neither is a great option.
No. But
she does think, like, she could try to help Oak not be a terrible person. But she starts to think, like, she wonders if there's a way to cut Maddox out of it so that, like, she could crown Oak and then send him away to be a king in exile, and then when he comes back and is old enough, he could take back over. And she thinks, like, Maddox would likely still take control of the throne in the interim, but if she could get Oak to grow up, like, in the human world and sympathize and empathize with humans, maybe he wouldn't be as bad. So she thinks there's only one way for it to work. And I think this is the moment she figures out the whole scheme that she does in the book. Like, I think she's like,
which is a pretty good scheme.
I love it, and I didn't expect it, so I'm here for it. And then she looks into the lake, and she actually sees her mother, which is wild, because she's been looking for her mother in here for
years.
Yeah. And she can read her lips, and her mother is saying, look, a human girl. So her mother is actually seeing her, which is, like, it's such a weird, like, but it's cool. But then Maddox's face actually appears, and he waves to Jude, and Jude wants to, like, tell her mother to run, but she knows that's the one thing that she doesn't need to tell her to do, because that is what she did. So she goes back to the Court of Shadows, basically, and the bomb is the only one up. Everybody else has taken a nap. And Jude asks where the bomb plans to go once all of this is over. But the bomb's just like, we can tell you're planning something, so I'm gonna stay here. And she also says, like, her materials don't travel well, which is just funny. Then the bomb says, like, Carden told them that if she was going to trade him or betray them all, she would have already done it. So she clearly has another plan. And
How does Carden know?
well, that's what she thinks. She's like, Carden actually knows her, and she's kind of like creeped out by it, but also like, nah.
But also like, ooh,
Yeah.
he knows me. He really knows me.
Right? So Jude asks the bomb if she could steal the crown in front of the kings and queens of Faerie. And the bomb just asks like what she needs to blow up. So the bomb is in for whatever Jude wants to do.
I love the bomb.
Me too.
Bomb.com.
100%. So she goes to wake up Carden then, and like she looks at him sleeping, and he's like sickeningly handsome, and you're like, there's so much sexual tension in this, like between them. It's wild.
Yeah.
So they go to talk alone, and she offers him a deal. She says, what if there's an alternative to Balekin? And he says, it's me. Like, obviously there's an alternative. I am the alternative. But he says he'd be terrible, and he would hate it. And Balekin wouldn't crown him anyway, so like, what the fuck is she on about? So she tells him that Oak is actually the right bloodline, and that they will make Oak king and send him to live in the human lands to have a chance to be a kid, and then he'll come back and he can take back over once he's grown up. She also tells Carden she'll get him everything he asked for and more, but she needs him to swear himself into her service. And he laughs at first because he's like, obviously that's a joke. Right. But she's super serious, and he asks why. He says their interests align, so there's no need for it. But she says he's too dangerous, and he could crown Balekin, so like she needs assurance. And I'm like, I guess I get it, but I don't understand why he agrees. And for the amount of time, too. I'm like, why would you do that? But anyway. So he says that he wants Hollow Hall, whatever it is. He wants that estate and everyone in it. And he wants every bottle in the royal cellar. And, and he wants the roach to teach him how to steal. And she's like, what? Why? And he says, because he likes him. And it could come in useful. So, like, he actually wants to crown Oak and then just live in his normal house. And he's like, fine, okay. So she agrees to it, and he offers his service for 1 year and 1 day. And I'm like, why didn't you offer it for, like, 30 minutes? Like, why are we... or for 2 days? Why...
I guess that wouldn't have been sufficient for her.
No, but, like, I feel like he could have been like, I'll offer it for a week.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
But also, if he's immortal, a year and a day is nothing.
True. That's a good point. She asks for more, but he says no, that's all he's willing to offer.
That's all, yeah.
Which is fair. And he takes her hand, and he swears himself into her service to act as her hand and shield for 1 year and 1 day, and not 1 minute more. She just tells him to go back to bed, and she'll tell him the plan later. And she kind of, like, looks at him, and, like, he's still in the same clothes he wore to the coronation, and, like, he's been sitting here playing cards and eating shitty meals, and he hasn't complained. And she thinks, like, it seems like he enjoys this more than living at home, which, like, he was being beaten at home, so it's not surprising. We kind of just, like, jump, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? But Jude and Carden go to the camps where all the revelers and other courts are staying, and Jude is trying to find a royal to back someone other than Balekin, and also to, like, cause a distraction so they can get Oak out once he's crowned. Mm-hmm. She's fully decided at this point that she's staying in Faerie to keep the throne for Oak, and she knows it'll be an insane undertaking because, like, obviously she won't be able to sleep, she'll have to keep poisoning herself, she's gonna be spying and all that shit, so, like, it's gonna be a hard few years. And she thinks, like, maybe Oak can come back after 7 years instead of the 10 that she was thinking about before. And she thinks,
yeah, because he's only 7 years old right now.
Yeah.
So, like, she's thinking he'll come back at the age of 14 and be like, I'm a king!
Yeah, right? I'm like, even 10 is not a whole lot. Like, he's immortal. Like, he could have a childhood longer than her entire life.
Yes, yeah.
But she also thinks, like, and I don't know, I guess I get it in a bit of a sense, but she's like, Oak will make Faerie better. And I'm like, why do we think that? But I don't know.
Yeah.
So she thinks of Locke then, and like how he made her part of a story, and she thinks she's about to do that to someone else. So like she's not empathizing with him in any way, but she's just like, he showed her how to do it in a way, and now she's like, she needs to do it with somebody else's life. And you're assuming she means Oak, but later on,
but also, but she's also like, I think a part of her sort of feels bad, like she had a shitty experience, and now she's like, I'm about to do that to somebody else, and like sort of feels a bit guilty for forcing sort of a future on somebody.
Yeah,
she, you know, without letting them in on it.
Yeah, and like it's just funny because I think it is exactly that. I think she does feel bad. So yeah, Jude then commands Carden to stay at the edge of the camp, and I'm like, why did you even bring him? But okay. And to wait until she's either ready to leave this forest, or if there's imminent danger, or a full day has passed, and not to signal to anybody that he's here. And if he does have to leave without her for one of the above reasons, that he needs to go back to the Court of Shadows. So he just tells her, like, she didn't do that too poorly, because, like, she cut off all the loopholes. She asks him what he knows about Queen Annette, and she says, like, she noticed that that queen left the coronation before anybody else. So Jude assumes she either hates Balekin or, like, all of the monarchs. But Carden tells her she's direct and she craves power, and she allegedly eats her lovers when she tires of them, which is not funny, but kind of funny. And so Jude is kind of like, well, it sounds like she'd get along great with Balekin. Like, why did she leave? And Carden says she has no heirs of her own, and she might not be able to have any. So Carden kind of assumes, like, she didn't enjoy watching an entire line get murdered when, like, she can't have her own kids.
Yeah.
And she's also likely not impressed that he, like, Balekin killed all of his family, basically, and still left without a crown. Like, he wasn't really successful. Carden touches Jude's arm then and says, take care, because it would be very dull to sit here for a full day if she gets herself killed, which is just kind of funny. And she tells him, like, if she does get killed, her last thoughts will be of his boredom. And it's just a cute moment.
Yeah, I love it.
Me too. So she finds a troll in, I guess, Queen Annette's camp and says that she's a messenger from Balekin and needs to find the queen. And he refuses her. And he, like, kind of makes jokes about wanting to eat her, which is, you know, fun. But it seems like the queen has refused to speak to Balekin or any of his messengers a lot. And I just found this kind of odd, because she's like, okay, cool. And she goes back to talk to Carden. And I was like, what was the point of that? She didn't do anything. She barely even tried.
Yeah.
But she actually, and I think this is smart, she asks him who he would apply to. And you're like, yeah, you should have asked him that before. But he says Lord Royben and the Elder King's son Severin. So they aren't actually part of the High Court. Like, they haven't sworn to the crown. But Carden tells her that's the point. Like, they have much more to gain if they swear to the crown. And they have a lot less to lose because, like, they're not sworn to the old High King. So, like,
they're not really attached to Balekin.
Yeah, exactly. While they're talking, Carden, like, reaches out and traces the shape of Jude's ear. And she just, like, shudders because of the touch. And then she closes her eyes and just feels a shit ton of shame. And it's like he realizes what he's doing and pulls his hand away. And then you can tell that he feels shame too. And I'm like, stop it. Just love each other.
But, like, also her ear shape is, like, a source of great shame for her anyway, too, right? Like, the fact that she doesn't have the pointy ears.
Yeah. And, like, obviously it's an anomaly to him because he knows pointed ears more. So it's like, there's so much to it. He also mentions, like, Severin has a mortal lover, so he might be more likely to listen to her, which is interesting. So she goes to see Severin first, and she just, like, walks up to his people and says that she has a message for Severin, and that the new High King wishes to come to an arrangement with him. And he's actually just, like, sitting out with his people, and she's kind of surprised because, like, he's a ruler, but, like, like, obviously he's, like, down to earth or whatever. But she just bows to him and says she needs to speak to him alone, and he agrees, and I guess his mortal lover calls out after them and asks Severin to fix her because glamored mortal servants are creepy, so, like, obviously she was acting like she was. So they go inside the tent, and he offers her food, and she says she wants to ask him to witness a coronation ceremony, but Balekin won't be the one crowned. And she says she's the next High King's messenger, and she shows, like, Carden's ring as proof. She promises him that his court will be recognized if they help, and there will be no threat of conquest. And she has a moment of, like, real fear here that, like, he could just leave and tell Balekin what she's doing, and she would be fucked immediately. But he says he's not going to insult her by asking who she represents because the only possibility is Carden. And it's just kind of funny because you're like, that's not who she's trying to put on the throne. But, yeah. And he says he's heard much about him, and, like, it's not all great, basically. And he actually tells her that he isn't the best ally for her. And she just says she just needs him to aid in the critical moment. And she says, whatever he's heard about Carden, he'll be a better king than Balekin. And you're like, while you're reading it, you're like, why is she agreeing that she's putting Carden on the throne? Isn't it about Oak? But interesting.
Yes.
So he says he'll help her as long as he's not the only one. And he says that's for both of their sakes because, like, they'll both be murdered if this goes badly. So she needs to get more allies. So she goes to the king of the termites camp, who is Reuben. And on the way, she grabs some branches so that, she has a task to do. And she just, like, sneaks in and she finds, like, the biggest tent. While she's walking, she thinks back to a game that she used to play with Matic. And it sounds a lot like chess. Like, they used to play it, and then if they'd have to leave, she would be thinking about it all day, and she would spend the day, like, anticipating what moves she would make next, thinking about where the pieces were on the board, kind of thing, and she would anticipate what his moves would be. But she was never able to anticipate Matic's moves. So, like, she would play out the game in her head and be like, I would do this move, he'd do this move, but then when they'd actually play, he would already be 10 steps ahead and beat her, basically. So she feels like that's kind of what they're doing right now, is she's still playing a game against Matic. He doesn't know it yet, but that's, like, the crux of what this comes down to. So she dumps the wood by a fire, and then she walks over and uses, like, a shadow to duck under a flap of the tent and just, like, lies on the ground, like, half in, half out of the biggest tent here, and just listening to, I guess, Lord Reuben and a pixie eating together. And they're eating takeout, and they have fortune cookies, and it's just kind of a cute moment. Like, the pixie's just like, what does your fortune cookie say? Does it say that you promised that this would be a great trip, and then there's been bloodshed nonstop? And it was just a cute little moment that I liked. But Jude is pulled outside of the tent by a knight, who then, like, brings her inside the tent and kicks her to the ground and, like, puts a foot on her back. And Jude thinks of fighting back, but she wants to, like, keep her skills secret, and she wants them to underestimate her. So she waits, and Reuben asks whose court she's a part of, and she says the true High King Eldred. And he thinks she's lying, which is interesting, because it's not usually what people jump to first. Like, they don't assume she's lying. But he tells her to come sit, and he dismisses the knight. And the knight's like, what the fuck? Shouldn't I snap her neck? But she goes and sits with them, and, like, before they'll even talk to her, they're like, eat something. So she, like, eats a dumpling, and it's, like, all mortal food, which surprises her. But he introduces the pixie then, who is Kay, and then he asks who Jude is. And she says that she came to see him because she can put somebody other than Balekin on the throne, but she needs his help to do it. And he asks if it's somebody better than Balekin or if it's just somebody. And she says it's somebody who didn't murder his family on stage, so isn't that automatically better? But Reuben's like, he's bloodthirsty and kills and, like, all this shit. So I'm like, this isn't really the best strategy. But Reuben just says, like, Balekin isn't a diplomat, but he can possibly learn. And he did pull off a coup, and most wouldn't have the stomach for that. But Jude just says, like, he almost pulled it off. Like, he still doesn't have the crown on his head, so, like, he hasn't really pulled it off completely.
Yeah.
And she says she didn't think that Lord Reuben liked him very much. And he says he doesn't. And he also says that Balekin is a coward for killing them the way he did. Like, Maddox is the one that killed Dane, and he hid behind his guards. He didn't actually, like, do it all himself, kind of thing. So she just says she needs someone with enough power to witness the coronation. So she needs him. And she says it's going to happen at Balekin's feast, and he just needs to give his oath to the new High King. And basically, she just needs him to witness it and say, yep, that's the High King now.
Yeah.
Kay asks her why she cares, and Jude says because she lives and grew up here, and even if she hates Faerie half the time, it's still her home. Lord Reuben assumes she's not going to tell him who the candidate is or how she's going to get the crown on his head, and she says that she would rather not. And he's, like, been very polite and nice during this conversation, but then he, like, lightly threatens to get his knight to hurt her until she tells them. But she asks if that wouldn't make him as much of a coward as Balekin, like if he gets his knight to do it instead of doing it himself.
Yeah.
And, like, the confidence and the, like, throwing it back at him, like, he appreciates that. So he says, very well, Jude Kingmaker. And she says, if she can put the crown on another head other than Balekin's, he'll help her keep it there. But someday he will ask her king for a favor. And she agrees to it because, like, she has no other choice. But she stipulates that it has to be something of equal value and within their power, which I think is smart.
Right.
Like,
it is very smart.
And Kai just says, luck mortal. And she
not even good luck?
No, just luck.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, I think I think it's fun. It's funny that Jude has all of a sudden become this great strategist. And, like, I know she was taking, like, strategy lessons with Maddox, but, like, it just seems like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So, she goes back to the hideout after this, like, chat, after finagling these sort of deals. And the ghost is there. And he's sort of like, what's going on? Are we getting that gold? Like, what are we doing? And she asks him, like, do you want gold or would you rather have revenge?
Fair.
And the bomb is there and she's like, ooh, you're plotting something. So we get into a little bit of a conversation now about Dane, and, like, the ghost is sort of like, you're surprised that I helped kill Liriope with that blusher mushroom. Like, I saw on your face when I told everyone that I was involved. Like, I saw that you were surprised. Mm-hmm. And she just said that, like, she was surprised, but it was because she thought Dane was different. And the ghost sort of says, like, you know what? Like, for a fairy, Dane was good. Mm-hmm. But in human terms, he's not.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, he was a decent guy. He'd rather have diplomacy and peace than war, which made him great in fairy terms. But, like, he was still power hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he still wasn't afraid to, like, get his hands dirty and, like, kill who he needed to kill. So, like, he wasn't fantastic.
Yeah.
And essentially, Jude needs to decide how much she cares about goodness before getting involved in, like, spying and, like, this whole political, like, fight for the crown.
Mm-hmm.
So, it gives her sort of something to think about. But then she she tells everyone the secret that Liriope's child survived and that the plan is to steal Balekin's crown right from under him during his feast. The ghost says, like, that sounds great. I want to stay. I want to serve the next High King as a spy. So he's on board with the plan, and she explains it in detail to him, Carden, the Bomb, and the Roach. So, like, they plan everything out. And the Roach helps her, like, tweak some things. They are, however, worried about Matic, because as soon as he sees Carden and Jude together, he is gonna know something's up. Because, was it last week he sort of said, like, if you know where he is, if you find him, bring him to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, if she walks in with Carden without having brought him to Matic first, Matic's gonna be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
They go over the plan again, and Jude has, like, this moment of staring at Carden's, like, fingers. And I'm like, what are you thinking of? Like, what, like...
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. It doesn't come out and say it, though, because it's YA.
Yes.
So she leaves the hideout at dawn. She has to speak to one more person before they all go to the banquet, and it's Vivian.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes back to Maddox's house, and, like, she says she feels like it was never really her house.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't understand, because at the beginning, wasn't she talking about how, like, all of her stuffies are in her room, and, like, I don't get it, but anyway. But she felt like she was stepping out of this life, and that after tonight at the banquet, she wouldn't be welcomed back into it.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes and packs some of her stuff, and then goes to Vivi's room. And Vivi sees the bag and is like, oh, good, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
To the human world. Because that plan, according to Vivi, is still in motion. Like, she said, oh, I just need a day to, like, clue some things up.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's got a bag. So it's like, oh, there's the day.
Yeah.
But instead, she tells Vivi that the past few months, she's been a spy for Dane. But he put a gaze on her, so she couldn't say anything until he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And Vivi asks, like, you were a spy, like, what did you do? And she says that, like, she snuck around, stole information, killed people, and she was good at it. And I'm like, didn't you only kill one person?
Yeah.
The messenger, like, 2 days ago?
Yeah.
And, like, you were only a spy for, like, 3 months, so how good could you have been?
Yeah.
That line I don't think was necessary.
Yeah.
But then she tells Vivi about Oak and Maddox's plan, like, about how Maddox's plan is to put Oak on the throne and rule as regent.
Mm-hmm.
And she asks Vivi to, instead of taking her to the human world, take Oak.
Mm-hmm. And
to raise him properly to be a good king until he no longer needs a regent. And Vivi doesn't like that.
No.
So, like, on one hand, she worries that Maddox will come after them, because she's like, isn't that what my mom did, what our mom did? Like, she took a child from Faerie,
Mm-hmm.
and look at what happened to her.
Yeah.
But Jude's like, oh, I'm sure we can get knights to guard you. And, like, I also have a plan as to why Maddox won't come after you. And in my head, I'm like, what plan is that? What's going to stop him from coming after them?
Yeah. Well, I guess the plan that the reader doesn't know, he's, I don't think she thinks he's going to go after him because they don't need him.
Yeah.
But the reader doesn't know that, so.
Yeah, so then she also, like, doesn't really particularly want to raise Oak and play, like, nursemaid and raise a small child.
Fair.
She's like, that is a huge responsibility to take, like, a 7-year-old away from everything he knows and have to raise him like a parent.
Yeah.
And, like, she's only, 19, 20 years old?
Yeah.
And then she's also like, what will I tell my girlfriend when I show up at the door with a 7-year-old?
Yep.
And Jude is sort of like, listen, I know this is not an ideal situation. Like, I don't want to ask you to do any of it, but, like, what, like, do you have another suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, obviously Vivi does not. So, Vivi sort of says, like, I want you to promise me that, like, what I'm doing will save Oak's life. Mm-hmm. And she says, it will. And she says, I also want to promise that it will not cost Jude her life. Yeah. And Jude says, it won't. But Vivi's like, I don't believe that.
Well, of course.
I don't believe you. But I mean, so far, she's been doing all right.
Yeah. She's making a lot of promises, though.
She is making a lot of promises. So after talking to Vivi, she, like, leaves. And she's, like, going to leave the house. But then she runs into Taryn. And they lock eyes, but, like, don't speak. Like, Taryn's still looking at her, like, shooting daggers. So, again, like, such a bitch.
Yeah.
Hate her guts. There's a bit of a time jump, and then her and Carden are approaching Hollow Hall. They walk right in the front door, arm in arm.
Yeah. And, like, I didn't realize that this was, like, it. I was like, oh, they're just going.
Yeah. I know, and, like... I find this book somewhat anticlimactic. Mm-hmm. Like, there's all this planning and everything like that, and I just found the end sort of like, wah, wah.
Yeah.
Like, not that the result wasn't satisfying, but, like, I don't know. I was just expecting a little bit more, like, of a peak.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Anyway, so they walk in, and Jude can't help but think that, like, even though Carden is terrible, he's also fun. And he looks regal and handsome in his outfit.
Handsome.
Yeah. And it's just real funny because, like, he was in hiding and nobody could find him, but now he's just, like, strolling in, like, as if he wasn't the most, like, sought-after Faerie in the whole world. And he's just like, hello! And, like, I'm calling the coronation, like, the Red Wedding event, because similar bloodshed.
Yeah.
Like, everybody dies. So, they walk into the banquet, and Jude sees Oak and Oriana standing over with Maddox. Obviously, he's going to keep them close. Mm-hmm. I do wonder, though, what Maddox's plan is. Like, how is he going to manage to get Balekin to put the crown on Oak?
I think he was hoping that Carden would do it.
But they didn't have Carden at this point.
Yeah. I don't think that they were planning on doing it tonight.
Then why was the crown there?
Maybe the crown is just there because they're like, this will be his. Like, Balekin probably had it there as a, like, maybe Carden will show up and I can get this on my head.
Okay. So Balekin is, like, speaking to Queen Orla, we'll say, of the Undersea, who is Nikasia's mom. Mm-hmm. And he sees them and comes over to talk to Carden. And, like, he tries to dismiss Jude, like, immediately. Like, why are you here? Why are you with him? And, like, okay, you can go away now, sort of.
Yeah.
But Maddox sort of also goes over at the same time and is like, I hope you're over here to, like, congratulate my daughter on bringing Carden to you. And, like, I hope you're offering her a shit ton of gold and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, or I hope you guys are coming, I hope you're over here to discuss the reward. Mm-hmm. But she can see on Maddox's face that he's, like, pissed.
Yeah.
Because, again, he wanted her to bring Carden to him, not Balekin. So now he's got to do, like, a quick sort of recalculate what his plan is going to be. Mm-hmm. And she sort of plays it off as being, like, oblivious. Mm-hmm. Like, innocent, like, oh, yeah, look here. And, like, not knowing what she did.
Yeah. Like, because if his whole plan was to get Carden there for Balekin, she did it. Like, if she didn't know what his other plan was, she did the right thing.
Yeah, so that's sort of how she's playing it. Like, look, Daddy, I did good.
Yeah. Don't like Daddy.
Oh, anyway, so like they're over by the wine table. So she's like smiling innocently at Maddox, like, look, I did the good thing. And then she pours them both some wine, like 2 different colors, a red, a like really deep blood red one, and then like a pale one. So, and it makes it very like she doesn't spill a drop.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
It's very obvious. So she lets Maddox choose a glass of wine, and then they both drink. And I'm like, this is straight out of The Princess Bride. And Balekin wants to get the crowning, like, underway. He's like, oh, you're here, let's crown me right now.
Yeah.
But Carden's like, dude, what's the rush? Like, let's enjoy the party sort of a thing. And Balekin's like, fine, you're in charge for now. Mm-hmm. Like, you have the power for now. But, like, both Jude and Carden sort of understand that, like, he says for now, but Carden's gonna get punished later for delaying.
Yeah.
Once Balekin is High King. And Balekin's sort of like, well, what do you want? Like, to crown, like, he knows that, like, Carden can say, I'm not gonna crown you.
Yeah. And
Balekin's hands are kind of tied because he can't kill Balekin, or can't kill Carden at all, because Carden's the last one. Yeah. As far as they know, right? Carden is, according to Balekin, Carden is his final sibling.
Yeah.
So, there's no way that Carden, like, that he can be crowned without Carden's consent. So he's trying to, like, make him deal. Be like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And he's like, let's talk about it after supper. So Jude sort of sees, I guess Balekin and Maddox walk off. And she knows that Maddox is trying to figure out who he can manipulate. And she also knows that if, like, Balekin and Maddox were alone, Maddox would have stabbed Balekin and killed him by now.
Yeah,
because they're, like, not alone. He doesn't need him.
Yeah, he's pointless now. So, yeah. And if he's dead, then it's either Carden or Oak. So, yeah, it's smart to kill him.
Yes. Nicasia then comes over to them and asks where Carden has been, and it's all cozy, and she, like, kisses him on the cheek. And Jude is like, I feel like what I got from it is Jude was, like, a little jealous.
Yeah.
Because Carden's always been kind to her and seems to care for her. Mm-hmm. And he looks at her sincerely and tells her that she should stay away from him tonight. Mm-hmm. And then he walks off with Jude.
Which is sad, too, because, like, he did love her. I don't know. I feel bad for him.
Yeah. So Jude then looks over and sees Taryn with Locke.
Blech.
And notices that Taryn is actually staring at them with what Jude thinks is a look of resentment. And she's like, she may be with Locke, but I walked in with a prince. Mm-hmm. But then she's like, oh, but wait, I can't put thoughts in her head. Like, I can't tell what she's feeling with a look. And I'm like, yes, thank you for admitting it.
Yeah, I love it. Like,
that
this
you
is
cannot
what I say.
see.
Yeah.
So then they're like, oh, that's phase 1. We've gotten in the door without being arrested. So, like, we've made it through phase 1 of the plan. Mm-hmm. But they have 5 phases. So it's get in, which they've done. Get everyone else in. So I'm assuming that's, like, the bomb, the roach, and the ghost. Mm-hmm. Get the crown. Put the crown on Oak's head, and then get out.
Yeah.
And she tells Carden not to go anywhere alone and leaves him to mingle with the crowd while she goes to speak with Oriana. She does see Severin approach Balekin and gets nervous that, like, he's gonna spill the secret.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, she just, like, she's like, well, I might have to skip right to get out, but, like, she just keeps acting like everything is normal. Mm-hmm. She goes to Oriana and Oak, and she wants to reassure Oak and asks if Vivi explained everything, but, like, Oriana sort of keeps him close, so she doesn't say anything. Like, she wants to, like, sort of whisper to Oak, but she can't, so she doesn't. Mm-hmm. But she does speak to Oriana, and Oriana's like, what's happening with you and Carden? And Jude says, like, I'm doing what you asked, but there will be a cost.
Yeah.
So I'm, doing what she asked in terms of, like, stopping Oak from being crowned and then Maddox being regent, all that.
Saving Oak's life-ish.
Yeah. And Oriana, like, assures, like, I will pay the cost. Like, whatever it is, I'll pay it. But Jude's like, we're all gonna pay it.
Yeah.
Like, there's gonna be a cost and we're all going to have to pay. Jude is having to pay by, like, staying in Faerie and, like, taking care of everything until Oak is ready to be crowned. Vivi is gonna have to raise him. Taryn, who the fuck knows? But, like, and then Oriana is gonna be parted from essentially her child.
Yeah.
So, like, everybody's gonna have to pay something.
Yeah.
And Jude sort of remarks then that her skin is flushed from the wine and, like, she's feeling the effects of it, and there's a metallic taste in her mouth. And I'm like, oh my god, like, could it be any more obvious that she obviously poisoned both cups of wine, a la Princess Bride?
Yeah.
With the iocane powder. I know it's not really, but there are so many. I feel like I've referenced Princess Bride several times in this.
Yeah, I think you did. Although, it was also last book, too. We referenced Princess Bride.
Everybody takes their inspiration from the Princess Bride.
Hot take.
Yeah. So she sees Vivi sort of across the crowd, can't really talk to her, but hopes that she will raise Oak properly and make him care about things other than power. So she heads out of the banquet hall then and turns a corner, and she opens a window in the hallway to let the roach and ghost inside so that they can grab the crown. However, Maddox followed her and told her that she should have brought Carden to him first, and he wants to speak to both of them now. So, like, he wants her to be like, okay, go get him, and we'll have, like, a little private conversation. And she confirms that she knows about his plan to rule Elfheim through Oak, and he's surprised at first that she figured it out. And he sort of asks, like, oh, are we gonna bargain now? Like, or, like, is that what this is about? And she's like, I don't know, like, she doesn't seem, they just, like, have a moment, and she doesn't really seem eager to bargain with him.
Yeah.
And he sort of tries to promise her everything, and anything to work with him. He's like, whatever you want, it's yours.
Yeah.
And he sees her being secretive and, like, sort of this whole thing about her knowing about his plan and coming in with Carden. Like, he sees that as being secretive and therefore opposing him. So he's, like, coming off as hostile. He's not being, like, her loving father. He's being the general now.
Yeah.
And he sort of uses words like, the crown will be mine. And she's like, you're not even mentioning Oak at all.
Yeah.
Like, don't you... And she's thinking, like, I know he loves us, but, like, he is who he is.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, bitch, please. I don't know. I don't know if I buy it.
Yeah. I don't really know why he kept them, the mortals. Like, it was like honor because they're his wife's children, I guess, but, like, I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything else to it that, like, you get in the next books or something.
Maybe nice,
there was a prophecy about them that we don't know.
Could. So she asks him, she says, okay, fine. Like, you haven't mentioned Oak at all in this, like, discussion. So, like, I want you to promise that no harm will ever come to Oak, and that when he's old enough, you will give him the crown willingly. And all the power you've amassed willingly. But, like, Maddox won't promise that.
Of course not.
Of course not. So Jude takes out her sword, and she's like, fine, this is how it's gotta be.
Yeah.
And he sort of tells her, like, girl, like, look who you're trying to fight right now. Like,
which is what we're all thinking.
Yeah. It's like, you're gonna try and beat me with a sword? Like, come on.
I taught you everything you know.
Yeah. And he tells her, like, you're not gonna win.
Yeah.
And she's like, and he's like, you can't beat me. And she's like, I already have. And it's like, oh, because she poisoned him, obviously. Yeah. And then he starts to go for it. Like, they start fighting. And, like, she's like, I knew he was good, but I didn't realize how much better than me he would actually be. And I'm like, girl, are you kidding me?
I know, it was so, like, I was like, why didn't we just wait a bit longer? Why didn't you delay this? Why are you fighting him?
Like, you didn't know how great he would be with a sword?
Yeah.
He's the general of the High King of Faerie.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yep.
Anyway, they do exchange blows, and she says that, like, he's actually, like, giving it his all instead of, like, pulling his punches the way he sort of did when he was training her.
Mm-hmm.
But she does manage to get a slice in him by using one of the ghost techniques mixed with Maddox, because, like, he didn't know she would know that one.
Yeah.
But then he elbows her in the nose, and she starts bleeding from the nose. And he, like, pushes her to the ground, and he says, like, surrender, and I'll forgive you. And she's like, no, you surrender. And then she sort of asks, like, you haven't been feeling, she says, you haven't been feeling good, have you? And then, like, you must not be feeling like yourself. And then he's like, what? And she's like, I poisoned you. And he's like, what? How? The wine!
I chose my glass.
Well, yes, because that's what he says. How did you know which one to poison? And she's like, I poisoned both glasses. So again, like, iocane powder. They were both poisoned. I've spent the last few years developing a immunity to iocane powder. So then he passes out. Yeah. And he just lays there on the floor. And she's, like, so exhausted, she doesn't even move his body. She just sits there with it until Ghost and Roach sneak in. Now, he's not dead. He's just passed out.
And I'm like, fuck, you should have killed him. Like, I know this is a YA book, but, like, what do you think is going to happen next book? Like, you're going to be fighting him your entire life. You should have just fucking killed him.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So, the Ghost and the Roach sneak in a few minutes later. She lets them in, and then she goes back to the banquet. Everybody is seated at this, like, long table. So she approaches Balekin very respectfully and, like, curtsies and tells him that Maddox sends his apologies, but he discovered some of Dane's spies in the castle, so he's gone to deal with them.
Which is so funny because it's true!
Yeah. But in reality, they put his body in Carden's old room, and Jude's like, he'll probably be asleep for about an hour.
I love it.
And Balekin then says to Jude that she's been pretty useful and offers her a reward. And he's like, would you like to live with one of us? And I'm like, is that like an offer to be a consort or like
no, doesn't he say, do you want to live as one of us?
He does. He said, would you like to live with one of us or as one of us?
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm like,
interesting.
With you, like, are you, does that mean he's offering her to be a consort or just to, like, live as a human in the, like, I don't understand what the living with one of them has to do with anything.
No, that's interesting.
Or maybe she would like to live as one of them. Mm-hmm. And that actually does kind of tempt Jude. Like, she lets her true emotions out at that moment. And, like, she's like, oh, like, could the power of the High King really do that? Make her a fae? Yeah. And, like, he sees that on her face, and he thinks he's got her.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because of what happens in the book. Like, why doesn't she figure out if the High King can do that and make him in the future?
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Maybe she does.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
So she goes to sit, and Locke then approaches her. And I know. It's like,
I hate him.
And he tells her, he was like, you know, I did like you. And I still like you.
Fuck off.
But then he's like, what I like most about you is that you never do what I expect you're going to do. And he's like, I never expected you to duel over me.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, massive eye roll. And, like, I don't even know if she gets a chance to answer. Because, like, if it were me, I would have been like, I wasn't fighting over you, dumbass.
Yeah.
I was fighting because my sister betrayed me.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with you. Other than you're the circumstance that made me realize my sister's a
fucking
huge
bitch. Luckily, however, Carden then comes over and interrupts. Mm-hmm. And they sit down to eat, and Carden... he asks, he's like, have I told you how awful you look tonight?
I love it. I fucking love it.
And she's like, no, you haven't. Go ahead. And he's like... And then he says, I can't.
I love it so much.
I love it so much!
It's so dumb, but it's my favorite.
Because it means he can't because she looks so pretty.
I love it.
Then, a minute later, the bomb strikes and an explosion goes off. And a bolt flies right at Carden and lands like a few feet from him. Mm-hmm. So, the roach comes out then and pretends to shoot at Carden again. Mm-hmm. And Balekin is like, six his knights on him to catch the roach. Mm-hmm. But, like, obviously this is a huge distraction.
Yeah.
And Jude sort of mentions that the roach told Carden to stay still and not to, like, run or move away from the bolts. Because if he stays still... there's a smaller chance that he'll be hit.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny.
But Balekin actually tackles Carden to the ground and lies over him to protect him. Now, obviously, we all know that...
he's protecting his future.
Yeah, he knows that if Carden gets shot, he'll never be crowned. So, like, he's not doing it out of a...
brotherly love.
Yeah. But that freaks Jude out because to her, this is actually giving Carden a reason not to go through with her plan. Mm-hmm. Because Balekin took care of him when Dane and the High King kicked him out. And, like, Balekin is his last surviving family, really. So, like, maybe he'll have a change of heart and crown Balekin and, like, the plan will be shot to hell.
Yeah.
And she thinks that, like, for Carden, actually, putting the crown on Balekin's head is safer than trusting her.
Yeah.
And, like, believing there could be a better future with Oak. Mm-hmm. So, like, she is like, oh, shit, what's he gonna do? Mm-hmm. What you gonna do when he comes for you?
Bad boys.
Funny. What? So the crowd is super chaotic.
Of course.
And she has somewhere she needs to be. However, she's slow getting there.
I found this part super anticlimactic. Like, even if it worked correctly.
Yeah.
What? This was your grand scheme? You're gonna steal it and then... Like, I just felt like there wasn't much to this part. I was like, I thought there was going to be more of a scheme.
Yeah. Anyway, so the ghost accidentally, like, the ghost is there with the crown having stolen it and throws it actually to Taryn, who was standing where Jude was supposed to be. And because they're twins, he mistook Taryn for her. So she's holding the crown. And Jude sort of, like, goes over to her and is like, give it, or, like, yells, I don't know how far away she is at this point, but tells her to give the crown to Vivi. Mm-hmm. But Balekin then approaches, and I guess everything has died down, and demands she give him his crown.
Yeah.
And, like, she's looking between Balekin and Vivi, and is sort of like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, because, like, obviously, she can't fuck over the soon-to-be king. And she has no idea what's going on.
Yeah. So, Lord Reuben steps up then and tells Balekin, like, just wait. She's only a mortal girl. Because Balekin's like, give me that crown or I'll cut you in half.
Yeah.
And Lord Reuben is like, dude, chill out.
Yeah, basically. He's like, you're the only one that can be crowned. Like, Carden's here, everything's fine. Like, what else is gonna happen?
Yeah. So that's, like, Queen Orla sort of pipes up about that. She's like, the crown can't leave the room. Like, it's so guarded.
Mm-hmm.
Balekin and Carden can only crown each other. Like, what's this girl gonna do with it?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, she could break it, but, like... But, like, yeah, so, like, if Balekin and Carden, like, they're the only ones that can crown each other, if they both refuse to crown each other, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, Jude then Lord Reuben then points out, like, dude, you're not even king yet, and you don't really have a great handle on shit.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, this is not bode well for you to be king.
Yeah.
So then Jude goes over and asks Taryn for the crown. And although she hesitates again, she does relent and let Jude take it.
Which you're like, good. Would have, I guess,
for the love of God.
This is a moment of, oh, at least she's, I don't know what it even is. Is it supposed to be like, oh, well, she's not that bad? She is.
She is. I feel like she's just happy to let Jude take over.
Yeah.
So Vivi is standing by with Oak. And then Jude actually calls Carden forward, and Balekin orders everything to stop. But the roach shoots a bolt at him, pinning his arm to the table and it's an iron bolt, so he can't remove it.
And you're also like,
why didn't you just shoot him and kill him?
Well, that too. But obviously they're trying not to kill them for some reason. I'm like, why didn't we kill Maddox? Why didn't we kill Balekin? But also, I'm like, didn't everybody go after the roach already? Like, how is he still just shooting off bolts? Didn't somebody try to, like...
Yes.
Wouldn't somebody have gone after him by now?
Yeah, the knights did go after. Like, Balekin's like, Knight, seize him!
Yeah. They just...
I guess he got away.
Yep.
So Carden sort of steps towards the crown, and Balekin tries to convince him not to do this. Like, he knows Carden doesn't want to rule.
Yeah. But it's just like, what does he think Carden's gonna do?
Yeah, he can't crown himself.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what's happening with Balekin. But like, Carden just tells him, like, I'm gonna do this just out of spite, essentially. Like, you were an asshole, so I'm doing this just, because I don't like you.
Yeah.
And Jude actually hands Oak the crown, and I feel like Carden should have seen this a mile coming. Why are you giving the crown to the small child?
Well, Oak has to put it on Carden's head. No, yes.
But that's not the plan. Yeah. The plan is for Carden to put it on Oak's head.
Yes.
So, like...
I get what you're saying. Yes.
Jude, Carden should have seen this coming. Right? If she gives it to the small child. And so Jude gives Oak the crown and urges him towards Carden. And then she tells Carden to kneel down to show Oak what's gonna happen.
He's such a dumbass.
He's such a dummy, yeah. So, like, she's like, come on, show him what's gonna happen. So Carden's like, okay. So he does it. And Carden still thinks, like, they're on the same side. But then she uses her power over him to order him not to move for 1 whole minute. And then Oak puts the crown on his head and says the words that he crowns him High King of Faerie. So Carden becomes the High King.
Plot twist.
Yeah, plot twist. So, like, once the minute is up, Carden is furious.
Yeah. As
is Balekin.
Of course.
But, like, I wonder, like, once he's crowned High King, can he not, like, renounce it? Could he not, like, because obviously, I'm just about to say it, like, Jude in her mind, she just wants Carden to be High King until Oak is ready.
Yeah.
But, like, then he'll have to be like, I no longer want to be High King. Couldn't he just do this immediately and then be like, here, Balekin?
He could, yeah.
Because I don't know why he wouldn't. She betrayed him.
Yeah. But,
okay.
I guess Balekin thinks that Carden did this all on purpose. So, at this point, he'd almost have to tell everybody that she has power over him. Because why did he stay there if he didn't want to be crowned?
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so, like, Jude feels bad about this, because she promised Carden he could get away from the court and everything about it, but, like, she obviously lied. And that she knows there's only one way for Oak to take the throne one day, and that's for Carden to have it for 7 years until Oak is ready to take it. Then Carden can abdicate and do what he wants.
Yeah.
So,
which, like, 7 years isn't that long.
No.
I think he can handle it. Yeah. For him, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to be king for 7 years. But I feel like it's not that big of a deal, dude.
Yeah. So she bows to Carden, and then everybody else follows suit, and everyone bows to Carden. And since he's sort of grown up in the courts, he knows what's expected of him. So, like, he starts to act like this was his, like, coronation all along, sort of a thing. And when he gives his toast, he, like, says, "And to Jude, you gave me a gift tonight, and I fully intend to repay it." So I'm like, is this a threat?
Yes.
Threatening her?
And, like, I kind of love it because we had talked about in, like, even the first week how fairies never let go of
grudges.
Yeah, and how, like, it's part of their personality even, or their, like, their race of people that they don't let go of grudges. So, like, this isn't just, like, she did something and he'll get over it. Like, he's gonna be pissed for a while. And I love it, but I hate it, because I'm also like, there's 2 full more books before we're assuming they get together, and, like, it's gonna take forever, and I'm gonna be so annoyed.
Yeah. Anyway, so the bomb, like, sort of sneaks over to her. I don't understand how the bomb is just there now.
Yeah.
But what odds? And says they finally discovered her code name. They've come up with her code name, because remember, they were like, we'll give you a code name once, you know, you're
part of our group.
Well, yeah, and once you've, like, sort of proven yourself.
Yeah.
And she thinks that they're gonna call her the liar.
Which they easily could.
Yeah. But her code name is the Queen.
Which I love.
A bit of foreshadowing there, too, probably.
Yeah. I just love it.
If her and Carden ever get together.
Yeah.
So that's, like, the end, and then we get an epilogue. And it's just, like, sort of a, here's where everybody is at sort of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the epilogue, they are shopping at Target, her and Vivi and Oak.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Oak is sort of marveling over everything, like, all the candy and the book bags and the clothing and everything like that.
It's kind of cute.
Yeah, it is really cute. And Jude's like, I thought Oriana would be opposed to this sort of situation, but she was actually very amenable and was like, yeah, I think it's best for him to be over in the human world for a while.
Which, like, is she ever gonna visit him? Are her and Matic gonna stay together? Like, there's so many questions there too. Like, is Matic gonna blame her as well for this? Like,
yeah. And it's funny because that was actually Oak's little question. It's like, is mommy gonna visit? And I don't actually know if he calls her mommy.
Yeah.
Or mom or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he asks if she's gonna visit, and she has to be like, yeah, I'm sure she will.
And, like, will she?
I don't know.
Yeah. Are we lying to a child already? Like, this seems like a poor start.
Yeah. So then we learn that Balekin is locked away in the tower, which I don't understand why. What did he do?
I guess Carden could do whatever the fuck he wants. And he's like, you used to beat me, so now you're in a tower.
I guess. Apparently Matic awoke in a rage that his chance to seize the crown had passed.
And, like, what's his payback? What's the right word? I don't know. But what's his revenge gonna be? Like, what is he gonna do now? He's not just gonna let this stand.
Heather apparently wasn't really happy when Vivi showed up with Oak. But, like, she still accepted both of them in.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So later on, they're having dinner, and I think they're just having, like, pizza or something.
Mm-hmm.
And Oak asks, like, when can I go back to Faerie? And she tells him when he's learned what he needs to. And also, and he's like, but when will I know that I've learned everything? And she said, you need to come back when returning to Faerie is a hard choice instead of an easy one.
Yeah.
So, like, instead of going back, like, when you want to go back because you miss it, like, go back when you don't want to leave the human world. That's when you know you can return. Which is great advice, actually.
It is, yeah. You're like, maybe you should have taken that advice about going back to the human world yourself.
Yeah. Valid. So she goes back to Faerie alone. She says that now she has rooms at the palace to keep Carden close so that she can use her influence over him. And I'm like, again, you want him to be king for 7 years. You only have influence for a year and a day.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do when that year and a day is over?
I know. She's fucked.
She is fucked. So she goes to find him. She sort of says, like, we haven't really spoken much since he's been crowned. So she goes to speak to him in the Great Hall, and, like, she feels really guilty for doing this to him. And she's also, like, horrified that, like, at the beginning of the book, she's like, this is the last person I would ever trust, ever. But now, like, they're sort of stuck working together. And so, like, she goes to approach him, and he asks, like, what are you going to do when the year and the day is over? And he doesn't have to do what she says. And she's like, I just hope that in that year and a day, I can persuade you to stay on until Oak is ready. And that's being honest, so, like, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And he says, like, what if I develop a taste for ruling and don't give it back? Like, and
also
and don't
a fair point.
But, like, at the same time, like, I also think that that's his right as one of the heirs.
Yeah. Like, why has she decided that Oak gets it when he comes back? Like, that's not her decision. Unless she continues to control Carden. Then it would be her decision, but...
So, Jude sort of thinks, like, or says, like, she always thought that would be a possibility, but says, like, I don't think you will. Because he said however many times he doesn't want to rule. He just, you know.
Yep.
And then he tells her, like, he will not make a good king. Like, that's just a fact. He's not a good king. So he sort of tries to punish her and says, you're going to act as my seneschal. And you can deal with Balekin and Reuben and Orla and everyone, and I will sit here and drink and have a good time. And, like,
which is,
that's
like,
fair.
That's
and, like,
what she wanted anyway.
Yeah. So now she went from being a mortal wanting to be a knight to a mortal being like, I don't really know what to call her, but, like, she's essentially ruling all of Faerie.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. And that's the end of the book.
Yep.
Carden as High King, Jude ruling for him, and everybody else pissed.
Yeah. Everybody wanting revenge, and us wondering how they're going to take it, because they're all going to take it.
Yep. So, sorry. So we've already sort of discussed, like, our thoughts on the book. We sort of just talked about it at the beginning. I didn't finish this book last time. I did finish it this time. I think I stopped about halfway through your section last time. So I did like it more than I thought I would, but I do miss, like, sort of the emotional connection. Sort of what I said at the beginning of the book. Like, I don't find that I care really about the characters and what happens to them.
Yeah.
So I'm still sort of there. I do think, though, that I will pick up the next. Like, I'll read the next one. Hopefully I can get into it, because, again, a lot of people said that the second one is better than the first one. So, fingers crossed that the second one is better, and we can get more into it, because a lot of people like it.
Yeah, I know. I think so. I had already started the second book after I read this book the first time. And it basically just starts exactly where you'd assume it starts. And I didn't want to have to read a full, I guess probably book and a half of them hating each other. Because I was like, we're rooting for them to get together. That is the crux of this series. But I'm like, it just seems like so much work, because you know they're going to hate each other. The whole next book, it's going to be him wanting revenge and her trying to figure out how she can keep him ruling and all this shit. But I'm like, I wasn't in the mood to just read an entire book about them hating each other when I just want them to get together.
Yeah. I really hope that there's, like, a little bit more romance in the next book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but my fingers are crossed.
Yeah, I don't know either. I feel like there's not, but that is also just me assuming.
Yeah.
She can't really do that, because I don't know.
Nope.
Maybe they'll have to, like, fake it for some reason. I'd be cool with that, too.
Yeah.
But, like, it does just, the next book does start, and it's like, he's fighting against me every day, and I'm like, I want something more.
Yeah.
I want you guys to be in love.
Yeah. And, like, I would say that, if anything, I wouldn't say that they're in love at all.
No, they're, like, she feels bad for what she did, and she is attracted to him physically, but she's not, like, she doesn't love him at all. She's still like, he was an asshole to me.
Yeah. And same thing with him. Like, he is attracted to her, but I think he really dislikes her.
Yeah.
So
how are we gonna foster this relationship?
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is it for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we'll be reading a new book, or should we say new books?
Yes, next month's even.
Yes, next month's. So we said we were going to do it, and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We are attempting and I say attempting, we're doing it. We're not going to stop. We're doing the Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn tandem read.
Yeah.
So we're going to take all summer, July and August, to read through both of them. It's 2 books, so we're going to go through it over 2 months. Next week, we will be reading chapters 1 to 10 of Empire of Storms and chapters 1 to 3 of Tower of Dawn, sorry. We are going to be posting our schedule on Instagram, but if you don't have Instagram or don't have us on Instagram, you can Google the tandem read schedule and you should find it just fine. So, in saying that, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.